Hi, everyone. My name is Eric, and this is my testimony. And so I think my story and my journey with God began before I was born. So my parents were going through a rough patch, and my sister had already been born. And so when I was born, my parents were already divorced. My dad took my sister to China, and that's where they lived. And my mom took me. And so my mom remarried to this guy who I would call my stepdad. And my entire life, there's this unconscious just hatred for father figures. Unconscious, just nonsensical despising of fathers. I hated my stepdad. I hated my real dad. And this really translated into my relationship with God. I've literally watched movies of people who would like hug their dads and stuff. Cringe. I would just cringe. Like, that's disgusting. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Did you just hug your dad? Don't hug your dad. You should literally just light him on fire. That was literally my approach. Father's Day made me super uncomfortable. I'm like, oh god, Father's Day? Come on, man. Like, why is there a day for fathers? Not even thinking that I would be a father one day. Not that I'm a father, but that I want to be a father one day. And so, why is this important? Because I think throughout my life, this un just this nonsensical hatred for father figures really translated into me viewing God as father as just something that was, you know, not important. I viewed fathers the way, people view Santa Claus. I knew that my dad would come into my life sometimes and he would send me like a toy, and then that's how I viewed fathers, as a person that would give you things. And that's how I viewed God as father, as someone who would bless me, as someone who would give me things that I want. And it's just that translated all throughout my life, and I never really understood what it meant to be loved by a father. And so now, just flashback. Actually, no, flash forward. Let's flash forward to when my mom became a Christian. Now, she became a Christian after she got a divorce and after she married this man that I would call my stepdad. And so she started taking me to church, and I would listen to these stories, question stuff, not even understanding, like, why is this important? I felt like my heart was so divided. I would go because my mom told me to go. I would go because these teachers gave me cookies and stuff. They gave me chips and toys. Like, I loved that. And so that's why I was going. I was going for material goods. And in the back of my mind, I was still questioning, who is this God? Why is he important? I want to disprove him. And starting at age 9, I started listening to apologetics videos while at the same time trying to look to science. So I was trying to see, which story sounded best. Did these Christians make more sense, or did these atheists make more sense? And to me, for some reason, I was always drawn back to the Christians. And now, what's even weirder is I think that this idea of a double life really began with me questioning if God existed and whether or not he really was with me. And so how did this translate into my life? Well, at school, I would be a completely different person. On the weekends, I would be a Christian. On the weekdays, I would be Eric. I'd be the Eric that everyone knew. I'd be the loud guy, the funny guy, the positive guy, the high on life guy, Xanax guy, weed guy, lust, sex, everything you can think of guy, all throughout my childhood. And so I would go to school and I would say, like, oh, I'm a Christian. But let's talk about girls. Did you see that girl right there? Man, she was so hot. I'm a Christian. Let's talk about money. Give me your money. I like money. Give me your money. Okay? And that was me. So everyone had this idea of who I was, and at the same time, that really wasn't who I am, you know? And my mom would tell you that throughout my entire life, like, if you really know who I am, I'm so quiet. I don't like to talk much. I like to think. I like to keep to myself. But sometimes I just portray this facade of Eric. Eric 2.0. Eric social, Eric belonging to the world. And why does this matter? Because throughout elementary school, this trend continued, and it really began with me juggling a belief in God and a denial of God. And that's what I did my entire life, all throughout middle school, all throughout elementary school. But something weird really happened. In 6th grade, I thought that, maybe I should get involved. I should get involved with church. And so I volunteered for VBS. And from there, I transitioned to serving in other places of my church. I did PowerPoint, I did a little worship, and all this stuff. And then I was starting to think like, okay, yeah, maybe this Christianity thing really is serious. But I think serving in church really drew me farther from God, unconsciously farther from God. Because I would continue to look to God as, again, this guy who gives gifts. Oh, God, thank you so much for giving me this position. Thank you so much that I'm allowed to teach. Thank you so much that everyone respects me and looks up to me and stuff like that. And my arrogance was building, and I started having these unexpected, unrealistic expectations of church and of people. I thought to myself, why isn't my church like Hillsong? Why isn't my pastor like Francis Chan? Why isn't my pastor like Ravi Zacharias, Billy Graham, Greg Laurie, Rick Warren? Why aren't people at my church like any of these people? And then came just this big change in the church leadership. The core group of people who were leading our English ministry left and took basically almost our entire church. Took almost our entire English ministry. And so our English ministry was literally just like 10 people at this point. It was like 6 kids, literally kids, is me, 5 other freaking middle schoolers, and just 4 parents. And, we're just trying to like drift through, trying to just freaking survive. And keep this in mind. While on Sundays, I was trying to drift through and survive, on the weekdays, I was living this facade, this Eric facade, this cool guy, I'm gonna talk about sex, I'm talking about drugs, and all this stuff guy, okay? So while I was becoming more arrogant, while my church was struggling, I was drawing closer to the stuff that was once balanced, because I felt like my church life was somewhat strong enough to balance my life outside of church in the previous years. But now, not only am I arrogant, not only do I despise my church, not only do I despise the people in it, I'm also living this double life, doing things that I'm not supposed to do, doing things that I really regret doing. And so I became farther and farther and farther from God. And it's so weird because even as I was just intellectually drawing farther from God, my heart seemed always to want to stay. My heart seemed always to want to find out who this God really is. And I think God capitalized on that. He would always just show up right when I needed him, right when I felt like, this is done. I can't do this anymore. This life thing, this school thing, this popularity thing. God, I'm done. He would just show up. And he'd be like, hey, I'm the living hope. And I would have little moments where I would be like, damn, this God is real. This guy is real. He's alive. And then I would return to all this chaos, all this madness, still thinking of God as this Santa Claus figure that translated from my idea of what earthly fathers were like. But what the real defining moment of my relationship with God really began my junior year. So my junior year, while all of these things I had talked about had already happened, this minister comes into our church, and I dislike her so much that I'm writing these emails just completely destroying her reputation, just destroying her image at church. And I was calling for her to get fired, not because she was a woman, but because I hated her. I hated her freaking existence, the way she looked, the way she acted, the way she taught, the way she did Bible study. I hated the fact that she called herself a Christian. I hated the fact that she would pretend to care. And so I really struggled with my faith at that point the most. I remember going to church one Sunday, and I said, F God, F God. This is all BS. You're a bunch of frauds. You call yourselves Christians. I can't fucking tell the difference between any single person in this fucking building and any random stranger I meet outside. And I would look to the pastors, and I just thought to myself, idiots, complete idiots. How can you be a pastor? Why the fuck are you a pastor? Seriously. Like, you don't know the first thing about God. You don't know what a Christian is. You don't know how a Christian should live. You're not even acting like how a Christian should be. Why the fuck are you a pastor? And this drew me even farther from God. And yet, as I drew farther, God drew closer. And so, comes my senior year. I'm still living this life of, I'll draw to God sometimes, draw out of God other times. I would still hear God's voice throughout my life, helping me morally, helping me at school, helping me just survive. And then at the end of my senior year, the girl that I had spent from middle school to the end of high school with decides that she tells me, like, I don't have feelings for you anymore. And I was just devastated. I was just broken because I was living, just keep in mind, I was living this double life of Sundays trying to float with the church situation, weekdays keeping up this act of who everyone thought Eric was, while juggling this relationship that I had with this girl. And I just placed everything in her. I had so many expectations for her. I 100% thought that I was going to marry her. I 100% thought that she was the one. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I really loved someone. Other than my mom. Other than the one person that has always been with me, my mother. I think this girl was what I placed so much value into. And she told me that she didn't like me. And then I once again, I put on this facade. I said, I'm fine. I said, I'm fine. I don't know. I was still struggling. I was still hurt, but I denied it. And I remember the day after she told me, I went home from school. I broke down crying. And God met me right there in the room, in my mom's room. When I was on the floor, I was kneeling down. I was crying. I was trying to hide. I said, I don't want anyone to see me like this. And God met me there. And I clearly remember I felt so warm. My entire body was so warm. And I felt him say, come to me, and I will give you rest. And then all of a sudden, all this warmth really calmed my heart. And at that moment, I was like, oh, God, you're so good. You're so good. And I don't know why, but after this event, everything in my life started to make sense. I was missing out I felt like I was unconsciously missing out on this father figure in life. I was denying this God who constantly pursued me. And I listened to, I don't know whose song it was, but this idea that God left the 99 to pursue the one. And I was the one. I was the one running. I was the annoying sheep looping in circles around God. And he just walks patiently. And he says, you know, Eric, I love you so much. I don't care if you run 1,000,000,000,000 miles from me. I'll meet you there. And so everything started to put together. And I thank God for my mom. I thank God for my mom because she's literally the reason why like my faith even existed throughout times when I was struggling so much. Because when she found God, she was so transformed. Okay? And she would teach me even when I was like, I fucking hate this. God is not real. She would meet me and she would say, hey, you know, but God still loves you. And I think God really used her to keep me afloat. And I reflected on thinking like, geez, you know, my mother, my best friend, the one that if the world turns against me, she won't, you know? And when no one in the world loves me, she will. When no one in the world believes in me, she will. And I finally understood all these attributes of who God is through my mother after that moment when he said, come to me and I'll give you peace. I finally saw like, wow, God, like, if my mom loves me this much, if my mom is my best friend, if my mom is someone that I trust and just would give the world for her, like, how much more does this God, who, when I reject him, he still loves me, how much more does he love me? How much more has he sacrificed for me? Someone who doesn't even deserve his love. Someone who literally, I should have died for blaspheming God. And I didn't. And so that was the peak and just another start to my relationship with God that continues now. And I still feel God speaking to me. And I still feel God. I still feel the same comfort. I still felt the same warmth. Just all of these parts of my life that they just still remind me just how good God is. And, you know, if you want to know more about my story, I didn't really fill in a lot of details. I gave a really quick summary. If you want to know more, talk to me about it. And if you're inspired from this and you feel like there's some similarities between what you're feeling, like, talk to me about it, talk to someone else about it, talk to whoever you trust about it, because God is so good. And if he worked through me, he can literally do anything. Thank you.